be accepted from the participants. Anyone who's found creating nuisance will be barred from the event. Let me acknowledge you all that our branch has organized over more than 75 events, including Region 10 programs beginning from March 2020 till date, and competitions on various topics, including webinar on advanced signal processing technique, IEEE student member development program, and many more. Our branch has also been awarded as the best student branch in the UP section in the year 2020. On behalf of IEEE BBD ITM branch, I express gratitude towards everyone who has been supporting us and attending the programs. Here's a short glimpse of various events organized by our branch from time to time. Most humbly, now I invite Honorable Director BBD ITM Lucknow, Professor Dr. Bhavesh Kumar Chauhan, sir, for the welcome address.
Thank you, anchor of the program, Mahek Singh. I, on behalf of IEEE UP section, as well as on behalf of BBD ITM Educational Group Chairperson, President, as well as all the stakeholders of BBD Educational Group, welcome the Vice Chairman of IEEE UP section and a very reputed academician, Professor Mohammad Rehan sir. It is really an honor welcoming you, because seeing your profile and of course the way you have been an exemplary, not only in AMU, to put it differently, in a energy map at a national level, as well as making it noticeable at an international level. Your really work is inspirational. You have led from the front, because now AMU campus as an academic institution is an exemplary renewable source academic setup all over the world. And of course, it's a matter of pride as an Indian, the kind of work that you have taken. And you have been heading our electrical department, both in financial, technical, as well as administrative capacity, and reporting to Honorable Vice Chancellor. And the way you have you made a right blend of academics with the practical implementation, I think that's an inspiration to all the faculty members also. So, the kind of work that you have been doing and really upscaling it is an inspiration to all the students also, the young one who really look for a very bright career ahead. So, sir, it is really an honor to welcome you at this forum, and I'm sure all these faculty members and as well as the office bearers of Power Engineering Society, like Marut Nandan Tripathi, who is the chair, and then vice chair, and then webmasters and secretaries and all other members of IEEE, student members, they will drive inspiration, because I think the way I think words are not sufficient, and such situation comes very rarely to a academician. And today I am feeling like that, very honestly, because despite the constraint, despite the challenges, despite the fact that at times you feel that you are an academic institution, whether it will be able to be done, you are not a part of industry, whether you will be able to pull it off. You have carried out your career with a lot of courage and conviction, and that have reflected as a result. You have changed the whole AMU campus. And when it comes to the energy, I think you are synonymous with the energy in AMU campus as well as in Aligarh. So I think it's really, I'm sure it must be a very great feeling to you also, the kind of changes that you have made. And now they are noticeable at national scale as well as at a global scale. And you are being invited at different forums to really share your important experiences. Considering the fact that integrating renewable energy has always been a challenge. But the way you have tackled those challenges are definitely, I think, a learning lesson for all of us. Maybe this forum may not give sufficient time, but I think in time to come, we will keep requesting you, and you will keep blessing the students as well as the faculty to really share these very important experiences, which can help to further scale at different geographical regions whenever the students join, as an engineer in time to come at different, positions. So thank you very much. And I'm really very excited and looking forward as an academician also for this session. And over to the anchor, and I congratulate all the organizers for having requested Professor Mohammad Rehan sir, because I know he's quite busy because of his so many responsibilities that he is at a helm of affair in the institutions as well as the different forums where he is involved. So I think it is an achievement to this programs also that sir has taken time out of his hectic schedule and will be sharing his expertise and experience, extraordinary expertise and experience with all the delegates. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your motivational words. Now, with great pleasure, I would like to introduce our speaker, Professor Mohammad Rehan, Vice Chairperson of IEEE UP section. Professor Rehan is a professor of electrical engineering with experience of about 20 years. He is the gold medalist of BTech Electrical Engineering and has done significant research work in the areas of smart grid and solar energy, both areas under national missions. He is also working as a founder director of the Center of Grid Integrated Green and Renewable Energy in the campus to address the research challenges presented by high penetration of the renewable energy in the grid. Professor Rehan is also heading the entire electricity setup, both conventional and renewable, of the university since December 2015 as the member in charge. He is an elected fellow of IET UK, IE India, and is a senior member of IEEE. Now, I invite Honorable Speaker, Professor Mohammad Rehan, sir, for the expert talk. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mehak. And shall I share my slides?
Please, sir, kindly go ahead, sir.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, it is very much clearly visible.
Okay. So thank you, Mehak, for introducing me. And I am thankful to Dr. Bhavesh Kumar Chauhan, the director of the institute, for such a kind and generous introduction and supporting and encouraging words. And I'm especially happy to know that you are, I have been told that you are an alumni of AMU itself. So that is,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That makes us the product of the same institution. And of course, I can understand that why these achievements of the university in terms of solar energy are a matter of happiness for you also. And second thing, before I start, I would like to congratulate the student branch of BBD ITM. I have been following your programs for a year now almost. I've been aware of your activities, and I'm sure because of that, the active branch, you have received the award also this year. So I'm very happy to see the kind of enthusiasm and dedication with which your office bearers and faculty members have been involved in these activities. And particularly, I especially appreciate these days. This is a challenging time for all of us, and in Lucknow city, particularly, there have been reports of large number of COVID cases. So in this environment, this challenging time, also you are arranging such a big event, such a meaningful event. So I'm really happy, and I congratulate the entire institute, and especially the branch office bearers and faculty members. And this is a month of Ramadan, holy month, and I pray for well-being of all of you. And I pray that we come out of this challenge as soon as possible. So now coming back to the talk. See, my talk is on decarbonizing the electrical power grid, the requirement, opportunities, and challenges. So basically, as you can see, I have a broad topic. So my aim is to highlight the importance of decarbonizing the electric power grid, why it is essential, what kind of opportunities and challenges it presents to, because it is a PES program, especially to the electrical and power engineers. And I'll try to give the pointers, the directions. So, I know, I'm sure that if the students or faculty members, if they get the pointers, they get the directions, and they are inspired, they can definitely pursue in that direction. So my goal behind this talk is creating awareness towards this broad area, and what kind of opportunities it offers to the electrical. So that is the, so this is kind of broad talk. And one thing which I would mention, that somewhere I have read that what a writer has written, that whatever I write from my wounds, that is writing, rest is verbiage. So the same I would like to say here. Whatever I'll talk mostly is based on what I have experienced, what I have seen from my own experience. So see, if you talk about different forms of energy, then the present day society, for the present day society, electricity is, if I say, the most important form of energy, then it will not be an exaggeration. You see, this electricity started with only lighting purpose, and then it slowly started covering our whole day-to-day activities, and now it is an essential part of our existence. And we sometimes fail to realize the importance of electricity, because like air, it is like air. You feel the absence of it. Like in case of air, you feel the absence only. Electricity also, you feel the absence of it only. So that is why sometimes people tend to ignore the criticality now it has in our daily lives. And I'm sure no one of us would like to stay at a place where electricity availability is uncertain. And you see, as I have said, from starting with lighting, then it went to cooling, then heating, and now we are going, transportation is also going towards electricity. And one important thing is that this whole digital age, which we call this internet, this communication, all this is driven by electricity. So you see, I would ask you to just recall last 15-20 years of your surrounding. You will realize how the requirement of electricity, that is the volume consumed, has increased, as well as the criticality has increased. So, and you know that the system by which we generate, transmit, and deliver electricity to the consumers is known as the power grid. Now, few things about power grid. You know, it is a complex system starting from generating stations to the consumer distribution system. So this is a complex system. It has a large number of components of different types, different operating principle, different time zone of operation. It is a large system. Of course, it is distributed across a large area, but important thing is that it is a geographically distributed system, but works as a single machine, you can say. It has a hierarchical structure. This is obvious. It is a dynamic system because events of happening from microseconds to hours happen in the power grid. It is an exposed system. Of course, it is exposed to mostly it is an open system and exposed to all kind of natural threats, as well as nowadays the cyber threats also. And last and an important thing, it is a just-in-time system. Whatever you require electricity, you have to generate at that time because of the absence of the large-scale storage. So these are some of the characteristic features of a power grid which we should keep in mind. Now coming to Indian scenario, you see the Indian power grid, as we are a developing nation, so our power grid has been evolving, and a huge addition has taken place in last decade or so. So almost 212 gigawatt has been added, which is equal to the installed capacity of a country like France. So in a very fast way, we are expanding our power grid. And why we are doing so? You see, our requirement has been increasing. The first reason behind that is that the development of a society is nowadays directly linked to the electricity consumption. So as the country is developing, the electricity consumption has been increasing. Then we are going through a process of urbanization. The villages are now more like towns. Towns are now more like cities. Cities converting into metros and like that. So that involves large requirement of electricity, and added with the increasing population. So because of these factors, we require electricity. Expansion of electricity network has to be done at a huge scale. I am quoting some numbers. Indian requirement will cross Europe by 2038 and USA by 2045. And the power grid, in terms of installed capacity, it will expand by around 8 times by 2050. And in terms of energy requirement, it will become 4 times of the current requirement by 2050. So this is the current scenario of our country, how the electricity demand is taking shape. Now, but what is happening simultaneously, and that is happening around the world, that the power grid which we know, which the electrical engineers know, which has been existing for over a century now, it is changing. And it had been aptly described by a past PES president that everything is changing. The way we make it, the way we move it, not remove, and the way we use it. But the problem is that everything is changing at the same time. So this talk is about this change, how the power grid is changing and why it is changing. So that brings to me to seemingly you will see you may feel that now I am going on a different track altogether, but you will realize later on that there is a direct connect between what I am talking and the power grid. So this is a story of just less than 2 centuries. That is since the industrialization has started. Rather, it took a reasonable shape. So you see what is happening. There is a gas, carbon dioxide. It is naturally present in the atmosphere. We have the Earth has a you can say blanket of gases surrounding, which we call the atmosphere, and CO2 is one of the important components of that blanket. So the concentration of CO2 for 11,500 years has been around 280 ppm, and the average temperature of Earth's surface was 15 degrees, around 15 degrees. But this 280 ppm has increased to 410 ppm by 2018. Why it has happened? It has happened because of increased industrial activities, which leads to many of the industrial activities are source of carbon dioxide emission. So carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere has been increasing. Now, I'm sure you know about the greenhouse effect. This blanket of gases has greenhouse gases, and greenhouse effect basically is responsible for keeping the earth warm. You see, all the energy which is coming from sun is not absorbed by the earth. Around 70% of that is absorbed, and the rest is reflected. reflected back. But that reflected energy, some of that reflected energy is trapped in the atmosphere by these greenhouse gases, which is the greenhouse effect. So under normal circumstances, greenhouse effect is required phenomena because it keeps the temperature of the earth suitable for living. But the problem is that as the concentration of these gases, especially CO2, is increasing, the warming effect is going beyond what is required. So CO2 is 30% of the greenhouse gases, but more importantly, it has a linger on effect. The CO2 which you release in the atmosphere can be there for around 100 years. So what is happening? Industrial activities mostly driven by fossil fuels. Fossil fuel burning leads to CO2 emission. It affects in two ways. One way, you are releasing CO2 in the atmosphere. Second way, naturally the fossil fuels act as stores for CO2. Fossil fuels act as stores for CO2. But so if you are burning fossil fuels in a fast way, on the one hand you are contributing CO2, on the other hand you are removing the natural stores of CO2. So because of this, the temperature of Earth has been increasing. And Professor Yashpal, if you know, you can recall, he used to simplify the complex concepts of physics also and science. So he explained the warming of Earth with the help of example. If you leave your car in sunlight with the windows closed, you will, and when you enter the car after some time, you find that the car is hot, because what happens? The outside energy is coming inside, but inside energy is not completely able to go out. So that is what trapping is. So this kind of effect is there in global warming, that the energy which is trapped in the atmosphere is causing a rise in the temperature of Earth. This is again an interesting way of looking into things, how the industrial activities have affected the atmosphere of Earth. So according to a study, what they did, simply the age of Earth is 4.6 billion years old. And if we scaled it down to 46 years, then on the same scale, the human presence is of 4 hours only. And the Industrial Revolution began 1 minute ago, just a minute. 46 years compared to 1 minute. So in this, we have destroyed half of the world's forests. So this is a way of looking at things, that how fast has been the degradation. So coming back to CO2 emissions, so the world releases about 50 billion tons of CO2 emissions a year, which is causing the increase in average temperature of Earth. Since the time temperature of Earth has been recorded, there is a marked increase of 1.2 degree. And out of that, 0.9 degree increase has been since 1971. So you may feel that 1.2 is, but you realize it in terms of the average temperature. Average temperature of Earth is 15 degree. You have gone 1.2 beyond that. So how it is affecting? Your weather patterns are changing, extreme weather effects. Then of course the sea levels are rising, coastal areas are under threat, and I'm sure you have been following the news, like the cities which never saw floods, they are seeing floods. Three of the major cities in India itself have seen floods in recent years. Though there is some factor of urban planning also involved in that, but extreme weather patterns, the sudden drought, sudden flood, extreme heat. You see those areas which never saw summer season, they are now seeing summer season. Those cities which never used ACs, they are now using ACs. And this is happening throughout the world. Last 6 years have been the hottest years in the 140-year record. And there are credible studies that one of the studies says that by 2070, about 19% of the ocean in the world will not remain suitable for living. This is 1% right now. The temperature rise in last 50 years is greater than previous 6,000 years combined. And see, people with foresight are warning about the consequences of these effects. Bill Gates has recently written a book on this, and he says that by 2050, 5 times as many deaths are possible as the number of deaths by COVID because of this climate change and global warming. And instead of these effects, there is a lack of awareness, because what happens if something is in future, if somebody says this will happen after 40 years or so, or 50 years or so, so you do not take action accordingly because you do not see the threat immediately. And a 2017 article in Science Advances says that by 2100, at many places, it will be fatal to just come out in the sunlight. And many of these places are in India and China in that prediction. So you see, few years back, there was talk of whether climate change is real or not, whether it has the kind of impact is being predicted, whether it is true or not. But now that is not the situation, and it is best expressed by Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, that like photosynthesis or gravity, or that the 100 degrees Celsius is the boiling point for water, like these are the facts. Similarly, climate change is a fact. So you need not discuss whether it is true or not, whether it will happen, it is happening or not, whether its adverse effects are there or not. It is there. But this is a threat, but that is where the opportunity lies. And another well-known scientist, she said that nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. And especially in terms of climate change, now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. And so that we can work on how we are going to face this challenge, how we are going to mitigate, adapt, and how we are going to build resilience. So I would like to underline here that I'm not the message, the idea behind this talk is hope, not creating gloom or depressing. It should not serve as a depressing talk. It should serve as an eye opener, and then realizing that there is a threat, but there is opportunity also, there is solution also. So now with this, I have given you the idea of, I started with power grid, the electricity scenario in India, the power grid, and then kind of taking a completely different path. I went on explaining the climate change and the CO2 concentration and that. Now is the time to make the connection that why I am talking about climate change in a talk on the PES Society platform. So there is a direct connection between climate change question and the power grid. So CO2 and electricity, what is the connection? So you see, you know that the most common method of generating electricity is by burning coal. And power grids account for almost 40% of the total CO2 emissions. So the thumb rule is that if you generate 1 unit of electricity by burning coal, then almost 850 grams of CO2 is released. And like in most of the countries, Indian grid is highly coal dependent. In terms of installed capacity, it is somewhere in the 50s percent, 50 to 53%. In terms of energy mix, that is the energy being generated at any instant, it is more than 70%. So you see, there is a direct connection between electricity and the CO2 emissions. If the increasing requirement of electricity, if you keep meeting that requirement by burning coal, then yes, of course you are adding to the already overloaded atmosphere in terms of CO2 concentration, which will lead to increase in temperature of the earth, leading to other adverse effects. So keeping this in mind, the United Nations have been working on this problem for almost 50 years now. It started in 1970s. Various initiatives, some successful, some not so successful, but the most important initiative which has been taken by UN is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And in the 2015 meeting, this is the landmark meeting of United Nations on climate change issue. There was a Paris Declaration of Paris Agreement in which sustainable development goals have been defined. 17 goals have been defined. So the idea behind this initiative is we need to work together to minimize the CO2 emissions so that this increase in temperature of Earth is restricted to 1.5 degree compared to pre-industrial era. So 1.5 is the ideal, but you see already we have, since we have already done the damage. So if not 1.5, then within 2 degrees. This is the goal of the Paris Agreement, to which 194, that is all members of United Nations are party. They have agreed, they have signed commitments for reducing CO2 emissions in their respective countries. So out of these 17 sustainable development goals, realizing that energy is one of the most important contributors to CO2. So 3 or 4 goals are directly related with energy, like affordable and clean energy, climate concern, and sustainable cities. So these are all directly related to energy. You can see the goal 11, sustainable cities. Goal 7, affordable and clean energy action. These 3 are specifically related to energy, and the most important form of energy right now is electrical energy. So these 3 are directly related to electrical energy also. So these are the 17 sustainable development. Now, as I have mentioned, that power grid is one of the most important sources of carbon emission into the atmosphere. So if we want to achieve sustainable development, if we want to achieve 1.5 degree or 2 degree targets by 2050, then we need to decarbonize the power grid. So how we are going to decarbonize? So broadly, there are 3 ways. One way is green energy sources for electricity generation. Green sources, I call those sources which do not lead to CO2 emission. When you generate electricity using these sources, it does not lead to CO2 emission. This is one aspect. Second aspect is increasing energy efficiency and promoting energy conservation. These are the 2 major aspects. Then the third role which the electrical power grid is going to play is when as you are shifting transport from fossil fuel to electricity. So if you apply the first 2 principles and simultaneously bring transport from fossil fuel to electricity, then a major role is to be played by the power grid in the overall decarbonization. So this is why we need to decarbonize the power grid. In India, this mission is National Mission on Renewable Energy, and the United Nations commitment, which I have just mentioned, the Paris Agreement, we have committed that we'll reduce our CO2 emissions to almost 35% by 2030 compared to 2005 levels. So to achieve this, one of the major component is installation of 175 gigawatt of renewable energy plants by 2022. This was the original. In fact, original was 20 gigawatt, then it was reviewed and 175 gigawatt. And now it is based on the success of this, we have renewed the target to 450 gigawatt by 2030. And of course, this is one of the most ambitious targets in the world. So in this 175 gigawatt, 100 gigawatt is solar power. 100 is solar power because our climate is more suitable for solar energy. Then 60 from wind and 10 biomass and 5 hydro, like that. This is the division of 175 gigawatt. Out of 100 gigawatt solar, the original target was 60 gigawatt on based on large scale plants, which we call megawatt scale, utility scale, and 40 gigawatt small rooftop plants. Then there is a very important scheme for agriculture, that is decarbonizing the agriculture sector also. That is the Kusum scheme, which relates to the solar water pumping used for agriculture. So this is our national mission. Now, the most important role played by any technology in shifting the generation of electricity from coal to green sources of energy is the grid connected solar PV plant. So these are the plants which you can install on rooftop or ground. The electricity generated can be used for self-consumption, and any excess is export to the grid, any shortfall is withdrawn from the grid. So I'm not going to the detail because I'm sure that you know about the working, but I'm just explaining in a brief way how it works. So there is no battery in these plants. What happens is, for example, here your load is 3 kilowatt, your generation is 2 kilowatt. So the shortfall is withdrawn from the grid, 2 kilowatt is used from the plant which you have installed. What is the benefit? You can see the financial benefit directly, but more importantly, you see the environmental benefit. So 2 kilowatt into number of hours into 850 gram. That is the saving in equivalent saving of CO2 emissions, which you have made this contribution. This is your contribution. But important aspect is that if your generation exceeds your requirement, then the excess is exported to the grid. So you see the beauty of this plant is that you are connected to the grid. The grid is providing you you can say it is battery for you now. When you require, you are taking from that. When you have excess, you are storing into that kind of. So here again, you are realizing both financial as well as environmental benefit. And this again, I would like to highlight that this technology is not something which is a futuristic technology. This is already in use and it's extremely popular and installed at many institutes and residential complexes, industrial complexes, and like that. So because of this, you see the decarbonization of power grid and the technology of this grid connected solar PV. The Indian power system is, you can say, getting green and distributed at a fast pace. Our airports are being solarized, our railway is being solarized. The largest solar powered airport is in India, the Cochin International Airport. Railway is also doing that. Metros are also, that especially the installation, that is the stations are going on that. So this is the status of these green energy plants, excluding hydro, large hydro. If you include large hydro also in this, then this number further goes up. And earlier we did not include large hydro in these RE plants, but now this has been changed and large hydro are also being part of RE plants. This is further slightly increased. This is an older number. It is almost 90 gigawatt now. the total green energy capacity is almost 90 gigawatt. Then academic institutions are also adopting these green sources. Like AMU has 6.5 megawatt right now, which includes a 3.3 megawatt ground mounted centralized solar plant also. So we are generating around 27,000 units per day in grid connected mode, leading to 20,000 kilogram CO2 saving daily. And in last year, last year we have generated around 80 lakh units. Before last year also we have generated around 78 lakh units of electricity from these solar plants. So you can calculate these environmental contribution of the campus, or which it is also known as the carbon footprint of the campus, how we have, for this electricity aspect, how we have reduced it. This is our centralized solar plant, 3.3 megawatt DC, 3 megawatt AC, and it has 10,500 solar panels in it. This is one of our rooftop solar plants. So what is happening in Indian grid is happening throughout the world. And as a minister of Saudi government some time back said that Stone Age didn't come to an end because stones were exhausted. Similarly, the coal age will not come to an end because coal will be exhausted, but it will be replaced by these new sources. And you see, in India itself, in 2011, we had 56 gigawatt of non-CO2 generating, that is green sources of electricity, which included 73% hydro, that is large hydro as well as small hydro. 2020, total we have 148 gigawatt. So this number now includes the large hydro also. So, and plus 57 gigawatt is already under installation. But the most remarkable rise has been the solar. See, the solar is now around 37 gigawatt, and in last 4 years itself, it has increased by 13 times, almost 3 gigawatt to almost 39 gigawatt. And that is why you can say that solar is the new king of electrical power. It has replaced coal from its dominant position. In India also, since 2017, annual addition of RE has been more than coal. And by 2030, wind plus solar will be 32% of the total, and 47% of the total will be on low or zero carbon electricity. So this is how the grid has been going through a radical change. And it is happening everywhere. In some countries like Germany, some days they have gone up to 80% and of electricity from renewable energy sources, and by 2050 this will be a regular feature. But most days will be on 80%, more than 80% of RE. So what is happening? These renewable energy plants are, a large number of these plants are near the consumer side. For example, you can take the example of AMU campus. So originally grid was large generation plants, then transmission system, then distribution system. Now we are going to have a mix, some large generation plants, then transmission systems, then some distributed generation plants near the load center. So we are having mix of size, that is large plants as well as small plants, mix of technology also. There is coal, there is solar, there is wind, and like that. So that brings me to one of the most important change which which the power grid is going through. You see, this was the traditional arrangement, which we have studied as a radial distribution also. The distribution side, it was completely radial, and you can call it the trickle down arrangement of electricity. It is starting from generation and going through transmission and that, and trickle down approach of electricity. But with the change which I have mentioned, what is happening? The distribution side is also starting to resemble the transmission side. Original system, the impact of distribution was lesser on transmission side. In this system, this impact is going to be much more. And one very important thing which you should, which I should come back to that. See, in this system, what is happening? You have a grid connected plant. Sometimes it is withdrawing power from the grid. Sometimes it is exporting power to the grid with the same cables and wires which are bringing electricity to your house. You are exporting back also. So this is, in this way, you are having a bi-directional flow of electricity. So this bi-directional flow is the most important change. See, on the distribution side, now you have the bi-directional flow of electricity. So that is why I say that for electrical engineers, this is we are fortunate that we are electrical engineers in these times, because the power grid, the whole electrical power system is going through the most important change since its inception. And if some of you have studied the history of electric power grid, then you know initially there was a war of currents between DC and AC. So that is known as the radical change era. So this, what is happening right now is nothing less than that. So as I have said, especially distribution side is going through a radical change. So in this scenario, the we means, when I say we means individually as an electrical engineer or a faculty member or researcher, as well as the institutions, the departments which are running these programs, as well as the societies like Power and Engineering Society, right? We need to address this question that, are we following this change? Are we in sync with these changes? I am afraid that may happen that the training which we are giving to our students may fall insufficient because of the rapid change in the electric power grid system. So we need to update ourselves, our structures, our contents. And because we need engineers who are able to design, build and operate this new power grid, what kind of solutions are required for the new challenges, skills, what kind of skills are required. And important thing is that there are many technologies, emerging technologies, which can have a very important role to play. So these questions we need to address. Now I have mentioned one challenge, that is the bidirectional flow, how distribution side is changing. Another important challenge with this high penetration of these sources is variability challenge. You see, for example, I give you the AMU campus example. We have a 6.5 megawatt system. But if we talk about in terms of units, then it is easier to understand. So suppose our system is generating around 30,000 units per day during daytime. But as soon as the sun sets, this whole load has to come up on the grid. So that is the load ramp in the evening. Likewise, where wind plants are there, wind doesn't blow always. So there may be good times and bad times for wind flow. So this is why this variation is there, this variational challenge. So now we have a situation in the conventional system, load was changing and generation was, because it was under our control. So generation was more or less known. In the new system, you have load is similarly still unknown, it is changing, but the generation is also changing. So both are changing, generation as well as load. So we need to strike a balance between these two. So that means in addition to load forecasting, the generation forecasting, which is based on weather forecasting, is also important. Then you see this interconnection. The grid system is an interconnected system. The north is connected with south, and like that, all regions in India are interconnected. So this interconnection is also playing an extremely supportive role in case of addition of solar and wind plants. So this has to be explored. Another important challenge which you should keep in mind is this zero inertia challenge. You see, the conventional system, you have the conventional grid, the generation is through synchronous machines. And synchronous rotating machines have some inertia, rotor inertia, and used to play a very supportive role. I'm sure you have studied in your power engineering classes. But this solar-based generation, if you talk about solar-based generation, it is inverter-based generation. Inverter is a static device, so there is no supportive inertia available to the grid. So how that challenge is to be met? Because as the penetration of solar power is increasing, the rotating machine generation is being replaced by static machine generation. So this is also another challenge. So I have mentioned that most important challenges which I have identified is this bidirectional flow, then variability challenge, and zero inertia challenge. And again, all these things, especially variability and this variability challenge, we need bulk energy storage system also. See, we need, and I'm sure you are following these developments, that there is a lot of work going on battery storage. So that development is extremely critical, and the day it occurs, and I'm sure that it is in the pipeline now, the kind of developments are already taken. So this will further change the way power grid has been maintained and operated. And here I'm trying to mention some of the emerging technologies which find a lot of opportunities in this new power grid. For example, this transactive energy system. So transactive energy system is basically this. I hope you know about Airbnb. That is this site on which, if you have some space for vacant for lodging for some time, you place your advertisement, and somebody who is looking for a space for lodging at that in that area at that time directly contacts you. The similar concept is now being applied to electricity, and it is important in terms of solar energy. See what is happening. What is happening if I go back to that distribution, that solar. The grid system has this facility that you are exporting excess to grid. But you see, now the operators are initially to promote the technology. A lot of emphasis was there on this, but now the operators are discouraging this. For example, in India, this export benefit is available only to residential and agriculture customers now. So, what about say a university? Suppose a university like us installs a large number of solar plants. So initially it was available for all kind of consumers. From last year it has been restricted. So suppose an industry or a university install solar plant, but for example, in our case, in the university campus AMU, we require, when we have a working day in say November, so we require around 35,000 units of electricity total during sunlight hours, and this number goes to around 60,000 units during May or June, that is harsh weather. So if you have installed, keeping in mind May, June, your solar plants, then you will have excess of generation in 5-6 months. If you have installed keeping November in mind, then you will have a shortfall. And in the absence of net metering benefit, what you are going to do with the excess electricity? So here comes the role of this transactive energy. So that is that there are two consumers having, one consumer has a say rooftop solar plant, and the other consumer signs an agreement with him that I'll purchase electricity from you at this rate. So this is what transactive energy system is. And there is a technology, blockchain. I'm sure you have heard about it. It is going to play a very important role in this, and it is already being tested aggressively everywhere. And in UP also, one pilot project has already been done. So this is a very important area. Then I have mentioned the forecasting issue, generation as well as load. So you need advanced forecasting techniques. So all the this machine learning, artificial intelligence, all tools find an application. Then you see the nature of distributed generation. Like the MU campus now has around 40 solar plants, small or big. Now their management, the data coming from those plants is used. So the Internet of Things, the big data analytics, these all techniques have a lot of scope here in monitoring and control of these large number of distributed solar plants. Again, the volume generated is very large because the more distributed nature you have for these generation plants, the more data will be there. So there is a lot of scope for these technologies or techniques. Now, I have mostly concentrated on grid, yani grid connected application, but there is a lot of scope for off-grid applications also. And the major challenge with off-grid application has been the cost and maintenance, capital cost and maintenance, and smaller life of battery. So expected breakthroughs in storage, which I have mentioned, will help, of course, but the existing systems is still useful. For example, you see this large number of places have this backup supply system. Diesel generators are there. So you can have solar plus storage for backup. So that can be an important source for decarbonizing the backup supply. Some people say that countries like India have a major challenge in going for decarbonizing the power grid or developing a smart grid. But there is a positive also. You see, because at many places in our country, the setup was not existing. So it is always easier to install a new setup in instead of revamping an existing setup. So like many places, if we go for these off-grid applications, which we are already doing, so it will serve us twin purpose, that is electrification as well as decarbonization. So that is an important area of application. And there are many recent developments which I would advise the students to look into, like Electricity Amendment Bill, which was released in 2020. It is an important bill which takes into account the growing renewable energy scenario in the country. Then we have operationalized 11 renewable energy management centers. We are one of the 4 or 5 countries in the world which have these kind of centers. So we are monitoring 55 gigawatt of solar and wind through these plants. These centers and these are they will evolve with further advanced techniques. So AI-based forecasting and scheduling tools are there for better monitoring and situational awareness. Then many new innovative things are being done, like the round the clock RTC tenders, where you want to ensure the round the clock power by utilizing renewable energy, different renewable energy sources. Then renewable plus storage has also been tendered. Then bundled, I'll advise you to look into this also, bundled sources of power, where you see bundled were all done in the past also. Difference is that in the past, the dominant source was coal, supporting sources were the renewable sources. Now the reverse is there. Dominant sources are renewable, supporting sources coal. So these are bundled sources. Then a very important initiative is the National Hydrogen Mission. So green hydrogen is going to play a very important role. There is cost restrictions right now, but it will be developed. So this is again an area which you can explore. Now, I have covered the green sources of energy part. That is where you are generating electricity using solar. Mostly I have covered solar, but wind is also an example. But as I mentioned earlier, decarbonization, to achieve decarbonization, you have to work on twin approaches. That is, one is technology source replacing the source. Second is energy conservation. That is using less energy by avoiding the unnecessary uses of energy. And we have been working in the campus. We have worked a lot on this in the last 5-6 years. And I have realized that technology has a role to play, but the equally important is the involvement of stakeholders, creating awareness and their involvement. And you see, we as the International Energy Agency has said, we need to see energy efficiency as a crucial clean energy resource, because the energy which we have saved is more than the energy which we have generated. So we need to take it as a source of clean energy. And so there are many technological measures you can take, like replacing the lighting appliances with LED-based appliances. Then occupancy sensors are there. Then programs which are being implemented by distribution companies, like demand side management, demand response, demand side management. And it is equally important in terms of solar energy. You see, your grid connected solar plant is working during daytime. And of course, as the distributor of electricity, you would want your consumers to do their non-crucial jobs during the daytime. So we need to shift the non-crucial works based on electricity from to the daytime. This will help us in better utilizing the solar energy. And then energy audit also very important thing, with as students to pursue this as a career. Energy auditors, energy manager, energy auditor, this is a career, as well as institutions also. To energy audit, like financial audit helps in identifying the financial leakages. Energy audit helps in identifying energy leakages. So institutes should go for energy audit, and as a career option also, energy auditor, energy manager, these are good opportunities. And as I have said, that creating awareness is a very important part. So for any institution, any organization, this should be an integral part of your greening initiative. So, and I have mentioned that any conservation drive should not make it related to money only. Because if you make it related to money only, then many people believe that I can afford, so I can pay the high electricity bill. But you should connect it with the moral values and of course the environmental concerns and duties. For example, I have done this in our campus, that operation of air conditioners. Many people did not know that the star rating and all these things are valid only when you operate the AC at a temperature of 24-25 degrees. If you reduce the temperature significantly, the energy consumption increases significantly. So we started this awareness campaign, and we had good success also in this. So these kind of activities are important. Then another very often neglected area related to conservation and decarbonization. These standby appliances and networked appliances like the PC and your mobile phone chargers and computers and all that. So this is a huge concern throughout the world, and this needs some awareness creation that you should not leave appliances on standby mode for a long time, because the consumption is considerable when you take into account large number of appliances, then it is a considerable consumption. And this is also we need to take into account in our initiatives, that water itself is a precious source, and you know how scarcity of water is threatening all of us. But in addition, it is energy conservation also, because you see the water pumping, treating, distributing, heating, etc. all involves electricity. So any conservation of water will reflect in your energy conservation also. Now, coming towards the end of my talk, what role universities or colleges have to play? And I believe the most crucial role we have to play in this, because we have two duties. One is we need to work on which we call the research questions, but we'll work on right research questions only when we are aware. We are aware of what is happening, what is the real need of the society. And second is we have to work as the supply for the regular supply of educated and skilled manpower. So we should make sustainable development an integral part of our future plans. But one important thing which we should ensure, that we should walk the talk. So if we are talking about sustainable development, it should be reflected in our decisions, our action, our implementation in the campus also. Like one thing which can be the starting point, we should adopt green and renewable sources on existing and new buildings. Then the different institutions around the world have devised many innovative ways. They have green teaching certification program. You can form some student groups also. You can have green energy leadership center, and as I mentioned, you can have energy audit also. But I believe the most important, most crucial part which we have to play is creating awareness, participation of stakeholders, discussion. We need to talk about these things in our classes, in our groups, in our clubs, in our homes also, among the friends, among the family, like that. So we need to make it participatory. We need to discuss. And in this regard, the organization of such programs is important. So now I'll share one thing. As I have mentioned, that I believe for electrical engineers, this is a great time, because you have a lot to do. You can do a lot of things. There are a lot of challenges waiting for to be addressed, and in doing so, you can grow yourself in your career also. So there is a famous technique, and I'm sure most of you know about are familiar with it. You know about it. Ikigai. So this is basically, the translation is reason for my being, reason for my being, my existence. So it says that it occurs at the intersection of 4 circles that is related to mission, passion, profession, and vocation. So I would like to extend this and convey to the electrical engineers that the time right now, you see what the world needs. One of the circles says what the world needs. World needs us, badly needs to decarbonize the system. And one of the most important sources of that is the power grid. So world needs to decarbonize the power grid. So what you are good at, if you are good at these technologies which can decarbonize the power grid, of course you have a good career. That is what you will be paid for. And but the important thing is that you have to develop a passion for it. If you develop a passion, you develop the understanding, you develop the key skills, then I'm sure there is a lot of scope, a lot you can do, and you can find meaning in pursuing these goals. So that is all from my side. Thank you, and I invite questions from the participants. And if you have any questions, please ask. I will be happy to answer. And I have mentioned my contact details also.
Uh, Thank you so much, sir, for your presentation. This is Dr. Khadim Moin Siddiqui.
Yes,
So
doctor.
actually, I have a question.
Yes, yes, please.
We have undergraduate students in our institution. So, sir, if somebody is going to do project in this topic, so how they should start to make project? Because the topic is vast, so I think they can make many projects. So, sir, yes, sir.
You see, I'll say that there are broadly four directions. So one direction is you take any technology. For example, you are working on solar systems. So you can work on the technology, like there is a lot of work going on the increasing the efficiency of solar cells, solar panels, so that the space requirement is reduced. So that is one area. Or somebody takes the wind side, then you can work on the wind technology also. This is one aspect. Second aspect is you work on the grid integration issues. That is how, in the presence of large number of these renewable energy sources, how the grid will behave, what kind of challenges are there, and how we can address those challenges. This is second direction. Third direction is you can work on the conservation side also. Like again, in conservation, you can have, for example, you can work on demand side management. That is one area. You can work on energy audit. Students can perform energy audit of, say, one building or two buildings of the institute, and give some key recommendations. So this is how you can pick up some components of the area: technology, grid, conservation, like that.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, my next question is actually in the present time, again, the COVID-19 situation. So I think students will not come college. So they will do their project by the software, I think. So which software will you recommend for making project in this topic?
See, normally I do not really recommend, especially for UG students. I do not recommend the simulation studies, because many a times what happens, we miss the real concept, and we just work on we get some good graphs and all that, and that is all. So I would advise in that case that they work on some case studies. For example, I can suggest you that, for example, you give a group the electricity consumption bills of your institution, and ask them to suggest a good optimal solar PV system which can be designed, which can be installed for the institution. So this will give them good insight. They will have to look for resources. They will understand how the system can be designed. So this type of activities are more beneficial compared to simply simulating using simulation software.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, actually, in our undergraduate curriculum, I have seen actually there is one subject, fundamental on smart grid. So,
Mhm.
yesterday, Professor Ashish Kumar sir has given the presentation on DC micro on micro. So,
Mhm.
sir, how means how much knowledge required for BTech students to complete this kind of project? Means in the microgrid as well as smart grid.
See, I'm not sure about what your curriculum already has for the UG students, but I believe, you see, I'll talk in terms of three different components. If we talk about smart grid, then the student of UG should know that what are the challenges with conventional grid because of which we need smart grid. Second is how the smart grid is going to address those challenges.
Mm.
Third is the difference between a conventional grid and a smart grid. Fourth is the important technologies required for implementing a smart grid. And fifth is the national scenario, what the Indian grid has been going through in terms of smart grid. That is, I think, sufficient for a UG student. In terms of solar energy, most of the syllabi which I have seen talk about only the solar cell, but we need to go beyond that. Of course, solar science would be a part of that. But second, we need to give them this knowledge that what is the solar module, how we design, how we decide, or how the number of panels, the one panel has how many cells, and then how we design a solar plant for a say 3 megawatt, 1 megawatt, how we design that. What is a grid connected solar plant, how it works, what are the off grid applications. So these things I think the UG students should know.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, actually, students are studying about the renewable energy and non-renewable energy sources in detail. So, how they can do the project in the energy conservation side, sir? Actually, if you will explore your means knowledge in this side, how they can start their project on the energy conservation side related to this topic.
So see, I am a strong supporter of anything practical. Okay, so I'll again say that the same thing. For example, you ask, for example, you give a student this task that you analyze your household electricity consumption. Okay, make that as a reference, and then explore your house, how what are the uh, options you see for energy conservation. For example, if you are a lighting side, what you can do, AC side what you can do, fan side what you can do, any conservation activity, and how what kind of what could be a realistic target which you want to achieve. Okay, so any household has a practical test bed is there. So instead of looking anywhere else, the student can start from the household itself.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your answers.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Dr. Khadim. And if any student has any questions also, or any faculty member or other participants, I'll be happy to answer.
Uh,
Good afternoon, sir. Myself,
Good
Hitansh.
afternoon.
I am
Yes,
BTech
Hitansh.
student. Sir, my question is why protecting wind turbines from lighting is very critical now?
Protecting wind turbines from lighting.
Yes, sir.
I am, Hitansh, I am afraid I am not really sure about this. Because one thing is that mostly I work in solar, but in wind also, particularly this aspect I have not explored. So you can have some web where you can look into the web resources that what is the
Okay,
issue
thank
with
you,
wind
sir.
turbines. In case of solar, I can say that these lightning arresters are an integral part of any solar installation, and you will not get an approval until you have a lightning arrester installed, plus
Yes, sir.
proper earthing of that. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any more queries, participants?
If you have query, then simply you can raise your hand and we will unmute you. Thank you so much, sir. Actually, I was asking questions on the behalf of my students. Actually,
No,
they
no, no.
for this.
If still there is any other question, you can ask, please.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. Aditi, now it is over to you, please.
I'm sorry, but I'm interrupting in between. But Professor Muhammad Rehan, since you have had a long tenure in terms of establishing AMU as a exemplary solar print at a national as well as other maps, what major challenge, means the biggest challenge that you came across while executing this practical implementation? So would you like to recount that, and means, because there must have been numerous challenges, but what most bigger challenge that you found that as an academic institutions, not necessarily as a policy issue, but even otherwise, whatever way you would like to, if you would like to differentiate between a policy issue or maybe implementation, that is also fine. So, sir, what was the biggest challenge?
Actually, as you have said, there were numerous challenges, but I would highlight one or two which are more suitable or more appropriate for you also as an educational institution. So you see, what happens is, especially educational institutions, and frankly speaking, when we started this project in 2015-14, there was a there was no significant awareness about grid connected solar plants, even in electrical engineering department. That is why I mentioned that we need to review our syllabi and our course contents, whether we are, what is happening outside world, whether we are addressing that in our classes. So the reason behind that was the same. Second thing is that when you have when you are a pioneer in anything, it is a difficult thing, because now educational institutions can look at AMU and say that they have done, we can also do it. They can convince their management also. But when we did this, obviously, we did not have any success examples in terms of educational institutions. But one thing which helped me a lot was what we did. We planned a visit to 3 10 megawatt each solar plants, which were installed in Lalitpur by the UP government in 2013 or so. We a team of 3 persons visited there in 2014 or 15. So there a lot of practical insights came to us. For example, I say to my students that you study a lot about tracking system. Tracking is in our books and in our research, it is a very important. But you don't see any practical solar system plant having tracking system. Not even seasonal. So this was told to me by one of the plants that they had planned for seasonal change in the tilt angle. But in the first time when they tried to change the tilt angle, there was a lot of breakage of solar panels and all that. So the benefit involved was less, the cost involved was more. So there are many these type of things which we learned from the field. So basically, I wanted to say that there was hesitation because it was a new project, and if it does not work, what will happen? Of course, and there was lack of knowledge about current state of the art. So that is why we need to be in sync with what is happening in the field. So that helps in taking right decisions. So Although at that time the grid connected technology was a mature technology, but somehow our books or our subjects were not taking care of that. So this I want to say regarding the challenges.
Sir, since it is a very significant capacity plant in AMU, do you also make use of forecasting, or means you just correlate with the grid in terms of consumption pattern?
You see, forecasting is more for the distribution companies, because what we are doing is we have installed a plant, we are connected with the grid. So any shortfall we are taking from the grid, any excess we are exporting. But if I am the distribution company, then it is of concern to me. So we are not doing that. But of course, for the purpose of research, we can do this. So already, for example, my students of UG students are already working on a transactive energy system project using these plants. So this we can do, but otherwise we are not forecasting.
Thank you very much, sir, for such a elaborative answer. Thank you.
Sir, my last question is, you are Honorable Vice Chairperson of IEEE UP section. So you are following our event, as you told in the starting of the program, you are following us since the 1 year. So sir, what message would you like to give to our IEEE volunteers as a Vice Chair of IEEE UP section?
I would say that IEEE, you see, when you are involved in these activities, you may not realize that what you are going through. But 5 years down the line, when you will look back, you will realize that probably it was one of the best decisions which you could make as a student. So see, everything boils down to the interaction. Organizational capabilities, interaction, managing the people. Everything boils down to that. Whichever field you choose, ultimately it comes to that. So IEEE activities are giving you the twin benefits. You are growing technically, because you, of course, the technical events are adding to your technical skills, your knowledge. But in addition, these are giving you the managerial capabilities also. So be involved in these activities, and I'm sure that, as I said, 5 years down the line, when you will look back, you will say this was one of the best decisions which you could make as a student.
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, we have taken your time more than 10 minutes. Now, Anchor, it is over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Rehan sir, for your quality time. Indeed, it was a splendid and a very well-informed session. We appreciate you being here and guiding us in this webinar. It was worth listening to you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Good afternoon,
Thank you.
everyone. I am Aditi Singh, webmaster of IEEE Y Affinity Group, BBD ITM. And now it's time to proceed the session ahead. Before the session ends, I'd like to request our participants to please fill the feedback forms, which has been provided in the chat box section. Also, the link for the quiz regarding this session is also provided. Kindly check out. Proceeding further, I would like to invite Professor Kanika Lamba ma'am, advisor Y Affinity Group, BBD ITM, to propose a vote of thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Aditi. Good afternoon to everyone and all present here. As by very good saying, knowledge is the most valuable commodity on earth. It grows exponentially. The more we know, the greater our ability to learn. The first, we explored our knowledge base. On behalf of management and organization BBD ITM, I would like to propose vote of thanks to each and everyone who contributed for the success of the webinar. First of all, I would like to propose a hearty vote of thanks to our worthy speaker, Sir Professor Mohammad Rehan, who in spite of his busy schedule, accepted our invitation and gave his valuable time to deliver webinar on topic decarbonizing the electric power grid, requirement, opportunities, challenges, and future scope. Thanks, sir, for your very interesting and thought-provoking insight. All participants have acquired a lot of knowledge. Thank you so much, sir, wholeheartedly. A special thanks to our worthy director, sir, our chief advisor, Sir Professor Bhavesh Kumar Chauhan. It's all because of you that gives us courage and confidence to create such knowledge sharing platform. I'm sure this would be beneficial for all of us. Most importantly, I would like to thank our respected HOD, EE and EN department, Sir Professor Rafiq Ahmed, for his all timely efforts and encouragement. I would especially thank our advisor, Professor Khadimuddin Siddiqui, for his consistent support and guidance. My sincere gratitude also goes to our PS organizing committee for taking topics that really matters in today's age and time. I would also like to mention my gratitude to our technical support team, Shri Khanna, Hitansh Divedi, Anshika Singh, Shrikant Singh, and Akhilesh Jaiswal for helping us in technical management, webcast, and webinar through our feedback handles. My deep sense of appreciation and thanks to all the PA's IEEE Society Committee members, Suryan Singh, Prince Verma, Avi Agarwal, Aviral Srivastav, Akriti Kushwaha, Mudit Singh, Marut Nandan Tibati, Abdullah Ahmed. Thank you so much, students, for being with us. Thanks to our anchor for the day, Mehak Singh and Aditi Singh. Lastly, I would like to present my deep sense of gratitude to our participants. But as always, this webinar would have been incomplete if we would not have these wonderful and active participants who attended the webinar with great enthusiasm and made it a successful event. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Thank you all wholeheartedly. Thank you so much. Over to you, Aditi.
Thank you so much, Kanika ma'am. Let me tell you all that our IEEE PES BBD ITM branch has its upcoming event tomorrow. It's a kind request to all the participants to show their keen interest in it as of today and make it a huge success. Hoping to see more of you all tomorrow in the event. Now it's time to call upon our respected HOD, EE and EN department, Professor Rafiq Ahmed sir, to declare the session officially closed. Over to you, sir.
I think, yes, sir.
Thank you, respected speaker, Professor Mohammad Rehan sir. And now, with the kind permission of our honorable speaker of the day, Professor Rehan sir, and Director sir, Professor Bhavesh Kumar sir, we would like to conclude the program. Thank you.
I think we can close the program.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Now we can leave the platform now. Thank you so much.
With the closing.
Thank you everyone for joining.